Hello, my fellow unicorns. Today I'm going to read Terrifying Tales to Tell at Night. 10 scary stories to give you nightmares. Click Clack, the Rattle Bag by Neil Gaiman. Before you take me up to bed, will you read me a story? Do you actually need me to take you up to bed? I asked the boy. He thought for a minute, then with intense seriousness, yes, actually I think you do. It's because I've finished my homework, and so it's my bedtime. And I'm a bit scared. Not very scared, just a bit. But it's a very big house, and lots of times the lights don't work, and it's sort of dark. I reached over and tousled his hair. I can understand that, I said. It's a very big old house. He nodded. We were in the kitchen, where it was light and warm. I put down my magazine on the kitchen table. What kind of story would you like me to tell you? Well, he said thoughtfully, I don't think it should be too scary, because then when I go to bed, I'll just be thinking about monsters the whole time. But if it isn't just a little bit scary, then I won't be interested. And you make up scary stories, don't you? I know she says that's what you do. She exaggerates. I write stories, yes. Nothing that's been published yet, though. And I write lots of different kinds of stories. But you do write scary stories. Yes. The boy looked up at me from the shadows by the door where he was waiting. Do you know any stories about Click Clack the Rattle Bag? I don't think so. Those are the best sorts of stories. Do they tell them at your school? He shrugged. Sometimes. What's a Click Clack the Rattle Bag story? He was a precocious child and was unimpressed by his sister's boyfriend's ignorance. You could see it on his face. Everybody knows them. I don't, I said, trying not to smile. He looked at me as if he was trying to decide whether or not I was pulling his leg. He said, I think maybe you should take me up to my bedroom, and then you can tell me a story before I go to sleep. But not a very scary story, because I'll be up in my bedroom then, and it's actually a bit dark up there too. I said, shall I leave a note for your sister telling her where we are? You can, but you'll hear when they get back. The front door is very slammy. We walked out of the warm and cozy kitchen into the hallway of the big house, where it was chilly and draughty and dark. I flicked on the light switch, but nothing happened. The bulb's gone, the boy said. That always happens. Our eyes adjusted to the shadows. The moon was almost full, and blue-white moonlight shone in through the high windows on the staircase down into the hall. We'll be all right, I said. Yes, said the boy soberly. I'm very glad you're here. He seemed less precocious now. His hand found mine, and he held onto my fingers comfortably, trustingly, as if he'd known me all my life. I felt responsible and adult. I did not know if the feeling I had for a sister who was my girlfriend was love. Not yet, but I liked that the child treated me as one of the family. I felt like his big brother, and I stood taller. And if there was something unsettling about the empty house, I would not have admitted it for worlds. The stair creaked beneath the threadbare stair carpet. Click-clacks, said the boy, are the best monsters ever. Are they from television? I don't think so. I don't think any people know where they come from. Mostly, they come from the dark. Good place for a monster to come. Yes. We walked along the upper corridor in the shadows, walking from patch of moonlight to patch of moonlight. It really was a big house. I wished I had a flashlight. They come from the dark, said the boy, holding on to my hand. I think probably they're made of dark, and they come in when you don't pay attention. That's when they come in, and that's when they take you back to their, not nests. What's the word like nests, but not? House? No, it's not a house. Lair? He was silent then. I think that's the word. Yes. Lair. He squeezed my hand. He stopped talking. Right. So they take the people who don't pay attention back to their lair. And what do they do then, your monsters? Do they suck all the blood out of you like vampires? He snorted. Vampires don't suck all the blood out of you. They only drink a little bit, just to keep them going and, flying around. Click-clacks are much scarier than vampires. I'm not scared of vampires, I told him. Me neither. I'm not scared of vampires either. Do you want to know what click-clacks do? They drink you, said the boy. Like a Coke? Coke is very bad for you, said the boy. If you put a tooth in Coke, in the morning it will be dissolved into nothing. That's how bad Coke is for you, and why you must always clean your teeth every night. I'd heard the Coke story as a boy, and had been told as an adult that it wasn't true, but was certain that a lie which promoted dental hygiene was a good lie, and I let it pass. Click-clacks drink you, said the boy. First they bite you, and then you go all ishy inside, and all your meat and all your brains and everything, except for your bones and skin, turns into wet, milkshakey stuff, and then the click-clack sucks it out through the holes where your eyes used to be. That's disgusting, I told him. Did you make it up? We reached the last flight of stairs, all the way into the big house. No. I can't believe you kids make stuff up like that. You didn't ask me about the rattle bag, he said. Right. What's the rattle bag? Well, he said sagely, soberly, a small voice from the darkness beside me. Once you're just bones and skin, they hang you up on a hook, and you rattle in the wind. So what do these click-clacks look like? Even as I asked him, I wish I could take the question back and leave it unasked. I thought huge spidery creatures, like the one in the shower that morning. I'm afraid of spiders. I was relieved when the boy said, they look like what you aren't expecting, what you aren't paying attention to. We were climbing wooden steps now. I held onto the railing on my left. He held his hand with my right as he walked beside me. It smelled like dust and old wood, that high in the house. The boy's tread was certain, though, even though the moonlight was scarce. Do you know what story you're going to tell me to put me to bed, he asked. It doesn't actually have to be scary. Not really. Maybe you could tell me about this evening. Tell me what you did? That won't make much of a story for you. My girlfriend just moved into a new place on the edge of town. She inherited it from an aunt or someone. It's very big and very old. I'm going to spend my first night with her tonight, so I've been waiting for an hour or so for her and her housemates to come back with the wine and an Indian takeaway. Please, said the boy. There was that precocious amusement again. But all kids can be insufferable sometimes, when they think they know something you don't. It's probably good for them. You know all that, but you don't think. You just let your brain fill in the gaps. He pushed open the door to the attic room. It was perfectly dark now, but the opening door disturbed the air, and I heard things rattle gently like dry bones in thin bags in the slight wind. Click, clack, click, clack. Just like that. I would have pulled away then if I could, but small, firm fingers pulled me forward, unrelentingly, into the dark. Is the boy a click-clack? This next story is called Homemade Monster by R. Chetwynd Hayes. Rodney was lost. That should not be possible in the 20th century England, where there are signposts standing at every crossroads, but Rodney had managed to do it. He had been cycling through a network of country lanes, and the signposts had not been helpful. They had said, Ketchum Wallop 1 mile, and under Basham 114 miles. And when he reached these places, they proved to be sleepy little villages surrounded by open fields. He could, of course, have asked someone the way to Benfield, which was his destination, but he was rather shy and found it difficult to approach strangers. So he cycled on, hoping that he would sooner or later reach a main road. And now darkness was falling, and it was beginning to rain. Then his rear tire made a loud popping sound, which was followed by a prolonged sigh, and the bicycle began to wobble across the lane. Rodney dismounted and pushed the machine up a steep incline, wishing he had spent his holiday with his family at Bognor Regis. The rain simply teemed down, and in no time at all he was drenched. Then there was a vivid flash of lightning and a really car-splitting clap of thunder, and Rodney, although he had tried to be brave, was very frightened indeed. He knew he must not take shelter under a tree, because his father had often said that trees attract lightning, and it was hardly the time to find out if this information was true or not. He crested the hill, wheeled his bicycle around a sharp bend, and saw the house. It was a very large house, standing well back from the road and surrounded by an unkept lawn. No curtains veiled the windows. In fact, some were boarded up, and it was reasonable to suppose the place was deserted. So Rodney pushed the rusty iron gate open, parked his machine in the large crumbling porch, then looked for a way to enter the house. The front door was locked, but when he made his way around to the back, he found a small window half open. It only took a few seconds for him to clamber over the sill and take refuge in the room beyond. Dust covered the floors, damp had loosened the wallpaper, and formed brown stains on the ceiling. The place was cold, and as the window refused to close, Rodney decided to venture further into the house, hoping that he would find a room with a fireplace so that he could light a fire and dry his clothes. The door, reluctantly and with many creaking groans, slid open to reveal a gloomy passage. This ended a large hall where a splendid staircase rose up in a graceful curve to a long gallery. A number of closed doors led away from the hall, and Rodney chose the nearest one, pushed it open, and entered the room beyond. He found himself in what once must have been a luxurious drawing room. The upholstery on the chairs and sofa had rotted. The carpet was hidden under a thick layer of dust, and festoons of cobwebs swayed gently from the high ceiling. But there was a fireplace. Rodney was wondering what he could use for fuel when he heard a sudden noise. It was the tramp of heavy feet, a slow, thudding tread that suggested a very large person who did not believe in hurrying but moved forward with the ponderous approach of a tank. The footsteps crossed the hall, then stopped, and Rodney realized that his footprints must be clearly imprinted in the dust, leaving a trail to the door of this very room. The footsteps began again and grew louder. As they came nearer, then the door trembled before it flew back and crashed against the wall. A giant stood A massive figure with a completely bald head and an immense barrel of a chest that was barely covered by a worn leather jerkin. A rumbling sound started way down in the stomach, then rose up and emerged from the creature's throat as booming words. "What are you doing here?" Rodney gulped and tried to speak without stammering. "I thought the house was empty. It's raining." At the moment there was a terrific clap of thunder, and the giant waited until it had died away before he spoke again. "I'd take you to doctor. Come." But I only... His arm was seized by a gigantic hand, and he was pulled toward the door, while his loudly proclaimed objections were completely ignored. They went back across the hall, along another passage, down a flight of steps, and finally entered a small basement room that appeared to be situated at the back of the house. It was furnished with 2 armchairs, a long bench under the window, and a battered desk. Behind the desk sat a little white-haired man whose small blue eyes were magnified by a large pair of spectacles. He looked up at Rodney, was pulled into the room, and expressed his astonishment by removing his spectacles, wiping them carefully with a yellow duster, then putting them on again. He spoke in a rather squeaky voice. "What's the meaning of this, Daniel? Who is this boy?" Clearly, Daniel did not believe in wasting words. "Found him upstairs." The little man raised his eyebrows. "Found him upstairs? 'Pon my soul, this won't do at all. You know very well, Daniel, my work is reaching a crucial stage, and I mustn't be disturbed." "Been walking about," Daniel stated. "Footsteps and dust." Rodney thought it was about time that he again explained the situation. "I thought the house was empty, sir, and as I am wet through—" "Good heavens, so he is," the little man interrupted. "He's dripping water all over my carpet, and must be well on the way to catching cold. Can't have that. The germs might get round and fasten their teeth on Henry." Daniel shook his head violently. "Dr. Frankwell boy has ears." Dr. Frankwell adjusted his spectacles. "So he has, so what? He'd look very funny without them." "Hear too much," Daniel insisted. "God mouth. Talk." Dr. Frankwell sighed deeply. "Oh dear, I keep forgetting not to mention Henry. Now look here, boy. You will forget that I ever did. There's no such person. You will dismiss the name of Henry completely from your mind. Is that clear?" Rodney, who was really very wet and extremely cold into the bargain, and would have been quite willing to forget his own name for some dry clothes, he said, "Yes, sir. Now, can you please—" The doctor waved his hand impatiently. "Yes, yes. Take him away, Daniel, and dry him out. Better give him something to eat afterward. But don't let him near anyone." Daniel did not bother to use any more words. He just pulled Rodney out of the room, pushed him along the passage, and deposited him in a bedroom. He opened a chest of drawers and took out a pair of trousers and thick woolen pullover. "Put on," he instructed. "Bring wet clothes to kitchen. First door on right." Then he went, and Rodney heard his heavy footsteps recede down the passage. The trousers and pullover must have been the property of Dr. Frankwell, because they were very tight-fit. But they were at least warm and dry, so it was with a lighter heart and a fully aroused curiosity that Rodney emerged from the bedroom and made his way toward the first door on the right. The kitchen was in a mess. Unwashed plates and saucepans were piled on the wooden draining board. The sink was full of cold, greasy water, and the floor was simply littered with turnip tops, potato peelings, and screwed up paper bags. When Rodney entered, Daniel was examining a half-cooked leg of lamb that he had just removed from the old-fashioned iron range. He pointed to a large wooden chair. Hang clothes on back, put in front of fire. Rodney draped his trousers over the chair back and laid his shirt, underpants, and socks across the seat. Then he watched Daniel's culinary activities. The huge man was cutting off the red, juicy parts of the joint, but the deeper he went, the more it became obvious that the meat was undercooked. "Excuse me," Rodney, who had taken up a cookery course in the Scouts, had to speak up. "I think you have taken it out of the oven too soon." Daniel said, "Ugh," or a sound to that effect, and stared at the leg of lamb with an air of complete helplessness. "May I help you?" asked Rodney. Daniel started as though he had been stung by a wasp. "Help?" "Yes, I can cook, and since you and the doctor have been so kind, I'll be pleased to, clear up for you." Daniel looked slowly around the kitchen. "Clear up?" "Nothing wants clearing up." "Nonsense." Rodney could not restrain his indignation. "This place is in an awful mess. Where's the broom?" "Broom?" Eventually Rodney found some cleaning materials in a narrow cupboard and set to work while Daniel watched him with growing approval. Presently, the leg of lamb, surrounded by a circle of potatoes, still attired in their brown jackets, was back in the oven. A saucepan of Brussels sprouts was simmering on a hot plate, and the kitchen floor had been cleared of all refuse. "Perhaps," Ronnie suggested, "you will give me a hand with the washing up?" "Washing up?" "Yes, all of these dirty plates and things, they need washing. Only get dirty again." Daniel was finally prevailed upon to dry up, but he wasn't very good at it, because at least 3 plates crashed to the floor, and 1 cup lost its handle. "What does the doctor do?" Ronnie asked, assuming the air of casualness. "He makes things." "Oh, really? I thought doctors treated sick people and wrote out prescriptions." This was a bit too much for Daniel, and he frowned as though his slow-working brain was struggling with a very complicated problem. At last he spoke. "Must not talk about what doctor do. It's secret," Ronnie suggested. "I say, is he working for the government?" Daniel frowned again. "No, government. No talk. Secret." But Ronnie did not give up so easily. "I expect you are a great help. The doctor is very lucky to have such an intelligent person to rely on." Daniel thought about this for some time. Then his lips parted to reveal large, fearsome-looking teeth. "I am big help. The doctor let me shift big pieces onto table, and once—" "You must not tell him I tell you this?" "Oh, no." "Well," and an expression of almost childish pride transformed Daniel's face. "Once I pulled a switch and made all the lights jump along wires." "Gosh!" Ronnie displayed all the signs of suitable admiration. "You are clever. What happened?" Daniel sighed very deeply. "No good. All the pieces flew apart." Doctor started again. "But this time—" He stopped, looked suspiciously at Rodney, then shook his head. "I'd not talk any more. Nobody must know. You must help get dinner ready." Dinner was served in a small dining room that was situated on the opposite side of the passage to the kitchen. Rodney laid the table, and Daniel brought in the by-now succulent joint, then went to fetch the doctor. The little man came bustling in, and positively beamed when he saw the sizzling lamb, the crisp potatoes, and the steaming Brussels sprouts. "Upon my soul, Daniel, you excelled yourself. absolutely excelled yourself. Daniel tried to assume a modest expression, but was quite unable to suppress his self-satisfied grin. Boy helped, he admitted with some reluctance. Did he now? Dr. Frankel seated himself at the head of the table and began to carve the lamb as though he were performing some intricate operation. What a bright lad he is, to be sure. Daniel, after dinner I will require your help. Henry has been lapping up the electricity all day. Daniel made a sound that was halfway between a cough and a growl and jerked his head in the direction of Rodney. The doctor gasped. Oh dear, I've done it again. Lad, do you realize there is no such person as Henry? As for lapping up electricity, he never did, never. I mean to say, he couldn't, could he? No, sir, Rodney agreed. That's all right, then. I can't imagine what came over me talking such rubbish. Nevertheless, Daniel, I think it would be safe to say tonight you will be able to pull the big switch. For a moment it seemed as if Daniel would get up and do a little dance, but he contented himself with banging a spoon on the table instead. Pull the big switch and all the lights will jump along wires. Dr. Frankel nodded violently. No doubt of it. Henry will be up and about. Boy, you must have some more Brussels sprouts. Very good for you. A dramatic interruption cut short his words. From somewhere a little way off came the sound of a loud thud, followed by the tinkle of broken glass. The doctor jumped up to his feet. Goodness gracious, Daniel, quickly, man. He's fallen off the table. He rushed from the room, closely followed by Daniel, turned left and went running down the passage. At first Rodney decided that whatever was taking place was no business of his, but he was very soon creeping down the passage, making his way toward an open door at the far end. He entered a large room that had probably been a larder at one time, for there were long slate shelves lining the walls and a massive table running down the center. Rodney noted the electrical equipment that stood on shelves, was screwed into the ceiling, and sent coils of copper wire to the table. But his full attention was drawn toward Dr. Frankel and the thing that lay on the floor. It was approximately 7 feet long, a grotesque human shape, swathed in a green plastic sheet, and it had various colored sockets jutting out from the head, chest, and ribs. The doctor was fussing about like an old hen whose chick had gone astray. Careful, Daniel. You may have loosened something. Gently, man. Daniel lifted the huge finger and laid it reverently on the table, then stood to one side as Dr. Frankel fitted wires to the sockets and made adjustments to a dial that was strapped across the stomach. No damage done, Daniel. We did our work well. He's fully charged, and when you pull the big switch, he'll be up and about. Boy here, Daniel pointed out. He see all. The doctor spun around, and there was the most pathetic expression on his face. Oh dear. Now the same thing will happen to me that ruined the work of my great-great-grandfather, the famous Baron Frankenstein. He left the door of his laboratory open, and a little girl called Mary Wollstonecraft Godwin got in and later wrote a full account of what she saw. The little beast that was read by the entire world. I hope you are not addicted to pen and paper, young fellow. Oh no, Ronnie hastened to reassure the little man. I hate writing, but have you really created a monster? Most certainly not. Dr. Frankel looked as indignant as his mild features would allow. I have designed, manufactured, and will shortly activate a humanoid electronic, non-lethal rapid developer youngster. Henry, for short. Good heavens. Ronnie could not tear his fascinated gaze away from the shape on the table. Did you make it out of dead bodies? The doctor laughed gently. Times have changed, and we have progressed since the days of my late lamented great-great-grandfather. I have used a special self-adhesive plastic, some blood substitute fluid that I have called GFI, and an awful lot of electricity. Now boy know everything, Daniel pointed out. Yes, but what does it matter? The doctor took his spectacles off, wiped them on the corner of Henry's sheet, then replaced them. As soon as Henry is up and about, the entire world will know. Can't you see the headlines? Dr. Frankwell creates a man. I expect I'll be invited to appear on television. Shall I pull the big switch now? Daniel asked. Well, the doctor looked undecided until Ronnie reminded him of a very important fact. We haven't finished our dinner yet. The doctor's spectacles slipped down his nose and his eyes widened with shocked horror. Great Scott, you're right, and the roast lamb will be getting cold. They all ran back to the dining room and continued their interrupted meal, although the doctor kept jumping up and trotting to his laboratory to make sure that Henry had not fallen off the table again. At length, knives and forks were laid aside, plates were stacked and carried into the kitchen, and Dr. Frankwell beamed at his assistant. Daniel, I can think of no reason for further delay. Henry is fully charged, his working parts are in excellent condition, the great moment has arrived. Henry certainly appeared to be very lively. If the strange twitching movement that was taking place in every part of his shrouded figure was any criterion. Dr. Frankwell first of all made sure that all the wires were fully connected to the sockets. Then he turned his head and nodded to Daniel, who was standing by a very large wall switch. Now, he said. Daniel pulled the lever. Instantly, pulsating streamers of colored light ran along the wires. Electric bulbs lit up and flashed on and off like neon signs. And from the far corner of the room, a large metal box began to make a loud buzzing sound. Henry displayed every sign of being well and truly activated. The huge shape was writhing like a cut worm. The sheet-covered head rolled from side to side, and there seemed a distinct possibility that the entire bundle would roll down onto the floor again. Daniel, Dr. Frankel shouted, his voice shrill with excitement. Watch him. I'm going to increase the current. It's do or burst. Ronnie sincerely hoped Henry would not burst. On the other hand, he was not at all sure that he wanted to see a homemade monster walk either. He seemed to remember that one created by Baron Frankenstein had not behaved in a civilized manner. He watched the doctor turning knobs, pressing different colored buttons, all of which resulted in the wires becoming brighter, the bulbs flashing more quickly, and the buzzing sound rising to an ear-splitting shriek. Suddenly, there was a loud bang, and all the lights went out. The wires became dull black. The electric bulbs went pop, pop, one after the other, and the metal box that had been making the awful noise became as silent as a Quaker's meeting. And Henry, after the doctor had lit 3 candles, it was easy to see there was no sign of life. All the wires are burnt out, the little doctor sighed deeply. 3 years' work gone up in puffs of smoke. Perhaps the fuses want mending, Ronnie suggested, surprised to realize that he was disappointed that Henry was not going to walk. But Dr. Frankel shook his head. No, all my equipment is ruined. I overloaded it, you see. I put kettle on, Daniel stated. Make tea. The doctor smiled bravely. Well, I suppose we might feel better after a cup of tea. There's not much we can do here. They adjourned to the kitchen where Daniel placed a large round kettle on a hot plate, then brewed some really excellent tea in a brown pot. There was no doubt that the doctor enjoyed his cup, for he sipped it with every sign of appreciation and had quite recovered from his disappointment after a second one. It's back to the drawing board, Daniel. We must use stouter wiring, double the feedbacks, and install even bigger switch. Daniel said, ugh, but did not seem all that keen. In the meanwhile, the doctor went on, we might as well get some rest. I dare say we can find our young friend a bed. Daniel nodded and poured some of his tea into a saucer. Rodney was about to express his gratitude when his ears detected a slight sound. Very slow slithering followed by a creak of protesting floorboards. Daniel also heard it, for his head came up, then turned in the direction of the open doorway. No one spoke. They just sat, waiting for the impossible to put in an appearance. Now the slithering was alternating with thud sounds. Slither, thud, slither, thud, and the suspense was so intense that Rodney dropped his cup. Then something very large filled the doorway, still swathed in a plastic sheet, with bits of wire dangling from colored sockets, with the dial still strapped to its stomach. The humanoid, electronic, non-lethal, rapid developer youngster lurched into the room and stood swaying like a tall tree in 100-mile-per-hour gale. Dr. Frankwell was the first to speak. It did work, Daniel. We gave up too soon. Henry is up and about. The plastic sheet bulged as two great hands came out and pushed against the confining material. Rodney heard a tearing sound as a long, ragged hole appeared, and one immense and one smaller fist sprang into view and began to punch the air in the most aggressive fashion. I don't think he likes us very much, Rodney gasped. Nonsense. Dr. Frankwell adjusted his spectacles. He's just pleased to be alive. Daniel, get him unwrapped. Be careful you don't hurt him. Daniel displayed praiseworthy caution. He approached the monster from the rear and unzipped the long fastener that ran from the top of the swaying head down to the gigantic feet. The sheet fell away, and it took all of Rodney's self-control not to turn tail and race from the room. Henry was not at all pretty. A head that resembled a misshapen turnip was surmounted by a mop of red hair. One eye was blue and round, the other brown and slanted. The mouth was extremely wide and filled with large yellow teeth. The nose could have been mistaken for a parrot's beak, the ears for wings of an ancient bat. A mighty chest was flanked by arms of unequal length. Rodney could not see the legs, for the creature was dressed in a long flannel nightgown, but the feet had much in common with two overturned vegetable dishes. Dr. Frankwell beamed his delight and was clearly waiting for everyone's unstinted admiration. Well, what do you think of him? It took a few seconds for Rodney to regain his power of speech. He's not very handsome, is he? Not handsome. The doctor frowned and examined his creation with some anxiety. How can you say that? Why, he's positively beautiful. Possibly I could have taken a little more care in the matter of his arms and eyes, but I think that a little irregularity of features can be quite attractive. Daniel, let's get him into a chair and invite him to take some nourishment. Getting Henry to sit down was not at all that easy. He took a wide swing at Daniel, then resisted most forcibly when that person exerted all his strength and pushed him into the doctor's chair. The little man looked at the remains of a long leg of lamb and cold baked potatoes. Do you think we should cook him something special, Daniel? Perhaps we could tempt him with a nice steak and kidney pie. Henry literally took matters into his own hands. The round eye stared at the cold lamb. The slanted one examined the potatoes. Apparently the round eye won the decision. The larger fist grabbed, the smaller one tore, and the great teeth began to munch. Perhaps crunch would be a better word, because Henry was not a dainty eater. Meat, bones, all went into the gaping mouth, were crushed and swallowed in little under 5 seconds. The doctor was delighted by this display of rapid consumption. He's got a healthy appetite. Gracious, Daniel. If this keeps up, he'll eat us. Rodney thought this was more than likely and decided he would not like to be around when the supply of roast lamb ran out. Having eaten, Henry slept. First the slanted eye closed, then the round one, having swiveled in its socket as though to make sure all was well. Also lowered its lid, and for a while there was peace. Then the wide mouth opened, and a sound that was rather like a saw being driven through a hard piece of wood filled the kitchen. Henry not only slept, he snored. The doctor yawned, and Daniel rubbed his eyes. Well, Henry has set a good example. Time we were all in bed. Daniel, do you suppose he will be comfortable there? Not like to wake up, replied Daniel, with obvious deep sincerity. If he not comfortable, he can go back to laboratory. The doctor rose. Yes, you are right. Leave the door open for him. As Rodney was taken upstairs and installed in a little dust-haunted room on the ground floor, he could not help wondering if it was wise to leave Henry all by himself. After some reflection, he barricaded his door by wedging the chair back under the handle, then lay down on top of the bed fully clothed. The old house was very quiet. The storm had long ago exhausted its rage and gone to sleep in the western sky. A full moon peered in through the undraped window and tinted the old furniture with silver light, forcing black slabs of shadow to lurk in corners and take on weird shapes. Rodney tried to keep awake, but what with one thing and another, he had had a tiring day, and consciousness crept up on him like a soft-footed burglar. He was awakened by a crash. He lay perfectly still for some time, but his heart thudding wildly, trying to dismiss the chilling thought that Henry was up and around. After a few minutes, he heard the sound of disturbed, broken glass, followed by a low wail that could have been made by an abandoned dog, or by a homemade monster that is not exactly dancing for joy. Curiosity and fear fought a hard battle. Curiosity, after much serious thought, won. Ronnie crept to the door, removed the chair, then went out to the passage. The clatter of broken glass drew him toward a room that was situated a few yards away. Rodney saw by now familiar neglect, the dust, and the smashed mirror that was scattered over the floor, each separate particle reflecting the bright moonlight, making them gleam like fallen stars. Henry was slumped against the wall, his grotesque face masked by shadow, his ridiculous hands held out as though in supplication. Rodney felt his fear ebbed away as he advanced into the room, dimly realizing that Henry might be a monster, something designed and manufactured by Dr. Frankwell, But apparently, he also had emotions, was unhappy. "What's the matter?" he asked. Not that there was much hope that Henry would understand him, although the R in his name did stand for Rapid Developer. The ungainly figure came out into the moonlight, the right hand pointing to the broken shards of mirror glass, and a strangled sound escaped from the wide mouth. Rodney picked up the largest piece of glass and stared at it thoughtfully. He held it out, and Henry shrank back with a muted cry. "It won't hurt you. It was only an old mirror, and I don't suppose the doctor will be angry that you broke it. He doesn't appear to use this part of the house." Henry's large hand came out, pointed to a piece of mirror, then turned and indicated his own face. Understanding flooded Rodney's mind with an all-revealing light. "You saw a reflection. It frightened you. Gosh, I expect it would. Look, that was you, see?" He held the piece of mirror above his head and tilted it until his young face was reflected in it in the gleaming surface, then turned it until it could be seen by the monster. Henry snatched the fragment of glass from him and stared at it intently. Suddenly, he pointed out to himself and made a growling sound. Rodney nodded violently. "You. It's you. Nothing to be frightened of." Henry did not appear to be comforted by this information. He flung the piece of glass across the room, and Rodney was surprised to see a solitary tear trickle down from the large eye, while a little moaning cry seeped out from between the sagging lips. He crashed both hands together and uttered his first word. You. Rodney nodded again. "It should be me, but you seem to have got the point. I say, you are bright." Henry lurched forward. Taking long floor-shaking steps, he crossed the room and moved slowly to the passage, with Rodney following a few yards behind. Boy and monster descended the stairs to the basement, and here Henry continued to advance until he reached the laboratory door. A single push from his right fist sent it hurling back, and a terrible suspicion flared up in Rodney's brain. He called out, "Doctor, Daniel, come quickly." The doctor emerged from a room on the left, dressed in a long white nightgown and wearing a tasseled nightcap. He hurriedly put on his spectacles, then peered at Rodney with some irritation. "Gracious me, what's all this noise about? I must have my 8 hours sleep. Absolutely essential." "It's Henry," Rodney explained. "He saw his own reflection, and now I think he's going to do something awful." As though to confirm his words, there came from the laboratory a mighty crashing and thumping, a splintering of wood, a shattering of glass, all intermingled with loud roars of insensate rage. "What on earth has come over him?" the doctor asked, by now looking extremely agitated. "Heavens above, he's ruining all my equipment. I will never be able to replace it. Daniel." Daniel appeared from another room, looking rather ridiculous in a woolen vest and a long pair of underpants. He ruffled his hair, rubbed his eyes, then asked, "What's wrong? Somebody making noise?" The doctor waved his hands frantically in the direction of the laboratory. "Henry's gone berserk. Get in there and restrain him." Daniel did not seem all that keen to obey his last instruction, but he dutifully went forward to the laboratory, with the doctor and Rodney walking cautiously in his footsteps. When he reached the doorway, he stopped and motioned his employer forward. "All finished," he simply said. Rodney looked fearfully over Dr. Frankwell's shoulder and came to an immediate decision that Henry had done a thorough job. All the intricate equipment had been smashed, broken wires hung like dead snakes from walls and ceiling, and even the table had been shattered into jagged fragments. Only one item still remained intact, and that was the large metal box that had formerly given a loud buzzing sound. Henry was working on that now. He had raised it high above his head and was about to crash it down onto the floor. "Stop him," the doctor shouted. "That is my charger. Thousands of volts of electricity are stored in there. The slightest jar and Henry will be blown to smithereens." Everyone began shouting at once, trying to explain to Henry his predicament. He stood perfectly still, the charger clutched in his ill-assorted hands, and it seemed to Rodney that a light of dawning understanding gleamed in the round, large eye. "That," the doctor said, pointing to the box. "Bang when you drop you." He spread wide his hands. "Finished. Over. Dead. No more." Seconds passed. Then Henry's mouth opened and he uttered 2 more words. "You finished." The doctor nodded. Daniel nodded. Ronnie closed his eyes and dramatically pretended he was about to fall down. Henry seemed to get the message, for he nodded too. When Daniel made a slight movement forward, though, he growled warningly. The doctor sighed. "Perhaps we better leave him alone. Come to think of it, we would be in great danger should he drop that charger." Rodney felt very sad as he trailed back along the passage. Then he took refuge on the stairs and waited for all what they knew must happen. The explosion was not very loud, just a muted booming noise, followed by a flash of bright light. The doctor and Daniel went back to the devastated laboratory, but Rodney remained on the stairs. Presently, the 2 men came back. The doctor was dabbing at his eyes with a large pocket handkerchief. "Nothing left," he said. "All my work gone up in a flash. I will never have the heart to start again." "Make hair restorer," Daniel suggested. "Lots of men bald. Me bald." Dr. Frankel suddenly looked much happier. "I say, that's not a bad idea. Make some money, too. Then I'll be able to get this place done up." "Thank you, Daniel." Daniel grinned delightedly and produced another gem of wisdom. "Make hair, not men." Later, when Rodney was cycling down the country lane, far away from that house of dust-coated furniture, he felt glad that Henry was no more. After all, there are enough monsters in the world without homemade ones. And that is the first 2 chapters or stories from Terrifying Tales to Tell at Night. Next time, I'll read you a few more. And I think there's one by Stephen King, so I look forward to reading that one. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching.